Dion's last lost album. Back in the 90s in Dion Fanzine, Yo Frankie, I started a series on Dion's lost albums. Mainly thanks to the efforts of Ace Records, those albums finally got official re-releases, with one exception, Dion and the Belmonts Together Again from 1967. I want to spend some time talking about this album and why it still needs an official re-release. When I first heard it in '92, I was confused because I was still trying to fill in gaps in Dion's back catalogue. I'd heard the last of his hit Strip Drop from 1963 and then Abraham, Martin and John in 1968, and I did not understand how Together Again fitted in. But now having heard Kicking Child, after a delay of 50 years, thanks Columbia, and Daddy Rolling in Your Arms, the B-side to Abraham, Martin and John, I can appreciate where Together Again seamlessly slots in. Misleading title. The most deceptive part of the record is the title, Together Again, implying the group is taking up where they left off in 1960 with Where or When. The title would have satisfied the company's marketing men and hardcore fans, thinking it was just a continuation of 1960. In reality, after 6 years, the Belmonts had moved on with a few minor pop hits, and Dion had had a major pop career, followed by a bruising battle with Columbia. Columbia believed the only career progression for pop stars was cabaret, and certainly not a folk or rock career. So the group are no longer pliable teenagers, but young adults wanting to reflect the contemporary sounds of Britbeat and the softer harmonies of folk rock, filtered through their own neighbourhood. Fans who wanted doo-wop mainly heard R&B call and response. As a result of these misunderstandings, the album sold poorly. Fans who were desperate for nostalgia would have to wait until 1972 for the reunion album. Tracks. Let's have a look at the tracks. Side 1 starts off with the upbeat Moving Man, no longer talking about teenage boy meets girl, but longer term relationships formed by moving out of one home into another. The song had been a major hit in Australia, and somebody thought it would do the same in the USA, but regrettably the single with minimal promotion went nowhere. Marimba is a fascinating choice, picking up on the Latin rhythms and sounds heard in the dancehall floors of New York. Let's not forget who the Brill Building's biggest Latin pop representatives were, the Drifters, and we know who one of their biggest fans was because he recycled 2 of their hits. Bill Graham, at about this time, was suggesting to Carlos Santana that he cross his blues with Latin, and that never did his career any harm. However, it was still a perverse decision to make the lead single Marimba. It's just a shame no American DJ flipped it. Come to My Side, a touching song about love and separation by Dion that could have appeared on Kicking Child or Abraham, Martin and John album. All I Want to Do renews the group's links with Mort Schumann, half of the Brill Building's team that had provided Teenager in Love. Schumann, now resident in France, was exploring Dylan's streams of consciousness as heard in this song. But Not For Me, another Brill Building song from the pre-war era by the Gershwin brothers. But where did the group pick it up from? Was it Kitty Lester's country hit? New York Town, a great hard driving song about going out on the town in New York City. However, is this song a knockoff of the blues song Born in Chicago? Side 2 opens with Loserville, a great song about the stresses and strains of modern urban life. For Bobby, written by John Denver, then an up-and-coming singer-songwriter appearing in the Greenwich Village. Jump Back Baby, a recycling of 2 Ton Feather from Kicking Child. Baby, You've Been on My Mind, a song by Dylan, who Dion had first encountered on the Winter Dance Party tour, and then seen regularly as he progressed through Greenwich Village. Dion's pop hits had part-financed Columbia when it was thinking of dumping Dylan after the poor sales of his first album. Dion states he worked with producer Tom Wilson to put an electric backing on Dylan's acoustic House of the Rising Sun, which was influential in him going electric. Dion was still performing this song live when he launched his solo career in the 1970s. The closing track is My Girl in the Month of May, written by Dion and perhaps the best track on the album, but should it have opened side 2? It completely reflects the sound of the summer of '67, although it was actually released in 1966. It was largely ignored in America, only to be picked up and played extensively by UK pirate radio and the emerging London psychedelic clubs like Middle-earth. It might have become a hit, if not for the cover version issued by Alan Bown. There are 3 further tracks we need to consider, released on the Together Again and More unofficial bootleg CD from 2002. Loserville, said to be an alternative to the side 2 opener, but I have difficulty in distinguishing between the two. The Band Plays On and Dream On. Both tracks sounding like they should have made the original cut, but would make excellent bonus tracks on the official release. Alternative title. Now let's return to the misleading title. Back in 1988, Lou Reed, Dion's inductor into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, had expressed his love-hate for his hometown in his album New York. I think Together Again would have made more sense if it was called after the last track from side 1. Perhaps retitled Together Again in New York Town, because the group's hometown is all over the album, from the front and back cover pictures, the music and folk harmonies coming out of Greenwich Village, and their links to the Brill Building. Formats. The LP came out on ABC in both stereo and mono versions in 1967. It was supported by 2 singles. At some stage, Pickwick Records released the LP with 2 tracks missing and misleadingly retitled Doo-Wop, although there is virtually no doo-wop on this LP. Together Again and More was released on ABC label in 2002 as an unofficial release. However, it does have a very clean recording of the album, apparently taken from a reel-to-reel tape. The future. The album was produced by Belmonts, i.e. the group, and Dion is believed to hold the master tapes. So what is holding up the re-release of this album? Is it down to all parties having to sign off on it? The album neatly fits between the Kicking Child LP at the end of the Columbia career and Daddy Rolling in Your Arms, his introduction track to get him a new contract at Lorry. I regularly return to this raw and exciting album and say, what am I hearing that others were missing in 1967? The remastering and re-release is long overdue and would fill the final gap in Dion's musical career. Surely fans do not have to wait another decade to hear the re-release of this important album.